To welcome Casey's Outdoor Solutions as a sponsor to our podcast. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home. Welcome to Strong Dads. Hey, I'm Earl Hutchinson, sitting in here with my partner, Kyle. Kyle, how you doing today?
I'm good. We're officially social distancing. We're not even in the same room since I'm recovering from my sickness.
We worked together the other day, and you were sicker than a dog. And you need to know that if I get sick, I'm coming after you.
That's fine. And when you did, I think you did to your own family. I think you got your own family sick.
I did. I was referred to as the COVID spreader. Yeah.
It's not funny, Merle. You shouldn't laugh about
It's
that.
not funny. I know it's not funny. I'm going to offend someone. But hey, man, we cannot wait to get into our show today because we got some really cool things that we're going to talk about. But more than that, we've got a really awesome guest. We have a guest who is a husband, a father. He is a veteran, and he is a pastor. He is also an encourager of men, and that is a big reason why we have our guest on today, because he's kind of doing a lot of what we are doing here on Strong Dads. And, you know, we never look at any of these guys doing what we are doing as competitors. It's just not, that's just not how we look at it. We're all on the same team, and that's basically trying to win more and more men and people in general over to the side of Jesus Christ. So anyway, we'd like to welcome to our show, Chad Zueck. Chad, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Great to be on the show today. Looking forward to our conversation and listen to you guys banter back and forth.
We might have to do a little bit.
You can join in, Chad. You can throw some jabs too. I know you don't know us very well, but we're open for, we can go back and forth on this one.
Thanks for permission. I was probably going to anyway, but now you just kind of opened it up for me. So I appreciate that, Kyle.
Thanks.
I mean, before the show, you said you're a Miami Dolphins fan, so there's a lot of ammo we have now.
Hey.
Kyle, we live in Bengal territory. Really? Do you really want to go down that road?
That's
Do you really
true.
want to go
Good
down
point.
there?
Good point.
So, Chad, there's a couple of things just to kind of get us started with, but, I gave a little intro there in terms of things that you're involved with, but you go really way beyond that. I actually came across you just because I listened to a lot of other podcasts and stuff, and you had a podcast. And I'm going to ask you to kind of feed us into some of the background here. You had a podcast. I think it was called Be a New Man or something along that line. Give me, now you're doing a totally different one. So what's going on with you and the work that you do?
Yeah, now I'm the podcast host and basically the director of content creation at Men of Iron, a national men's ministry out of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And so, but where it started for me, now my work with Men of Iron, I just see it as an extension as to what I've been doing and just almost like a natural progression, truthfully. I've been doing a podcast of my own called New Kind of Man, and a website associated with that, helping guys, encouraging guys, and doing a lot of the same stuff that you guys are as far as encouraging and equipping men. And so what I've done with my podcast is with A New Kind of Man is just, I wanted to elevate people's stories. I want to talk about the stories of overcoming. So I've talked to everyone from CEOs who've gone through some struggles, or just guys just like us who've gone through struggles, or had the opportunity of speaking to several Navy SEALs, and also kind of drawing out their stories and hoping to encourage and then helping other men to overcome. And that work was built off of 4 pillars based off of Luke 2:52. And that scripture says that Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and in favor with man. So really my life's kind of goal in my life, just how God is shaping me right now, even with Men of Iron, is I look at the growth of a man through those 4 pillars. So whether it's intellectual growth, spiritual growth, relational growth, or physical health. So for us, we're never going to be perfect in those areas, but I think that men need to grow in those areas. And when we do so, we grow in integrity. And integrity is just, it's bringing all of these four pillars together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're never going to be perfect in any of those things, but yet I think personally, in my opinion, I think the call of Christ likeness it should draw us and inspire us to grow in those areas, because after all, Jesus did.
Yeah.
And you said those pillars came from that scripture in Luke. You said is that what?
Yeah. It was a really cool story, Kyle, because I'll go into it just briefly. So I've read multiple books on men's ministry, men's health, those kinds of things, and been on a journey for just shy of 20 years, probably 18 years or so, working with men locally for a long time, until I actually started the platform with The New Kind of Man, and now with Men of Iron. But so I'd read all these books, and there was really nothing that really brought it all together for me, until I was asked to actually give a series of talks at a local school to young men, and helping them to be men. And the school just happens to be somebody who I've partnered with in the past. And they asked me to give a series of talks on masculinity and manhood and what that looks like. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that's such a broad, such a broad thing. So I stuck my head in the Bible, and I started to kind of see different things. And then I landed upon Luke 2:52, and I'm like, the answer's right here.
Sure.
And it says that Jesus grew in these areas. And there's also another kind of reference to Jesus's growth physically in Luke 2:40. And it talks about Jesus growing in favor and spiritually in favor with God, and also physically in just strength. So I found it through just a study, but then I knew that once I'd stumbled upon it, I knew that needed to be what I talk about, and really the main message that I help to promote.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think the idea here of you see yourself being driven to speak into men, there's a reason why we're being driven to this, because we're seeing the deficits. You don't deal with something that's not a problem. If it's not a problem, it never comes to the surface. But the idea, and that's kind of how Kyle and I both came to the work that we're doing as well. I spent 32 years in the schools, and 20 of them specifically working with families and dads as a counselor. And the problem just was right in our face. Kyle was seeing it as an inner city fireman, where he's walking into homes where drugs are all over the place, and moms are being left with multiple kids, and it's just a mess. And I'm in a basically what's supposed to look like a middle-class suburban neighborhood, and I'm watching men drop the ball like crazy, and watching the deterioration of the school, the family, the neighborhood, everything. And for me, it was really like, this is a man problem. This is not any other thing but a man problem of men losing their way, which brings us back to what you just mentioned in Luke. Like, we need to start growing again. And so, oftentimes we refer to it as a mad passion here. We're mad, but it's a passion that we feel like we need to speak to.
Yeah. Bill Hybels calls that a holy discontent.
Yes.
Of just, just that sense of just something that God is birthing inside a person because of the discontent that you see in the world. And for me, it's much of the same. I mean, I see this, I have seen this for a couple decades now within church. I wasn't raised in church, and I've had a lot of things that have happened in my childhood, and just, just kind of like shaped me in some negative ways. And God's been trying to rewrite my story, and has been rewriting my story ever since. And then when I would say that I started to really kind of take off and understand myself and understand men a little bit better, again, probably 17, 18 years ago, that was one of the things that I started to look around and seeing. I'm like, wow, in church, this should be the place where men have it the most together. And that's simply not the case. That's not been my experience anyway. And of all the men that I've talked to all over the country, really in different places of the world, they've echoed the same thing. It's the same type of problem. And the problem a lot of times goes back to passivity. I mean, originally at the fall, right? Eve ate of the fruit. Where's Adam? He's just passively standing around. He's like, he just didn't do what he should have. He shouldn't have said, hey, honey, this isn't the right thing. Remember what God said. Instead, he did nothing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that what you're saying, Merle, and for me as well, and Kyle, you could definitely, by your experience, you've seen this too. We're kind of tired of men doing nothing.
Yeah.
So we want to help men to stand up, own their space. And I love what Jim Ramos, and he's a podcaster. I've been able to be on his show, and he was on mine. Men in the Arena. He said, when a man gets it, everybody wins.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. This is a win-win if we do what we need to do. And so, so this is just a great opportunity for us to speak with you. And we're going to have a neat, just general topic today. Before we get into that, let's thank the people who believe in us here to keep us moving here. So we would like to thank our sponsors. In particular, we want to thank the Kreimer's Beer House for coming alongside of us. Kreimer was with us from the get-go, and he has well, it's actually Mark Kreimer, but he owns the restaurant. And Chad, if you ever get up into the Cincinnati area, you got to go to Kreimer's Beer House, because it is just a very cool, manly kind of place. And it's great food, just great woodwork, great atmosphere. And so we are just proud to have Kreimer behind us and supporting, reaching out into men. And he himself is a man's man. He's a beast.
Absolutely. We definitely also want to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for coming alongside of us. Definitely right now, more than ever, with the season changing, for sure, go down there, check them out. They got some really cool landscaping materials, outdoor solutions, all that stuff. You guys are going to need to check them out down in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. You can call them at 812-537-3800. Give them a call, let them know that Strong Dad sent you down there, and we really appreciate them for coming alongside of us.
All right. Thank you, sir. So, you and I talked a little bit before the show, Chad, just about the idea of, well, what's kind of on our mind? What are we seeing with men? And you had brought up the idea of risk, taking risk, men and risk, and aversion to risk. And man, my brain just started going crazy with that, because everything from the stupid risks that I've taken to the ones that have produced fruit and been good, to those that I wish I had never experienced. So, what is it in your mind that you're seeing with the risk, the topic of risk?
Yeah, I'll kind of go back and some of this. I'm a dad, so my son will be 25 here, actually on Mother's Day, so 3 days. He'll be 25, and my daughter is 17. And just kind of observing in my own life, and also in specifically in my son's life, but also my daughter too. Just watching them and us growing up, we're kind of like, we just naturally risk takers. We just do things because we just don't know the boundaries yet, right?
Right.
Like, parents come in to teach us the boundaries. We just don't know what is a good risk and what's a stupid risk. I remember when I was a kid, I don't even know how old I was, but actually my mom and I think my aunt or my uncle, there was a whole bunch of us. She allowed us to walk along the edge of this dam. Huge lake, like just walking literally on the dam, and water is on both sides of the dam. And, it was just that whole thing. And I sat back, and that's just such an example. When you're younger, you don't know that how risky and how unnecessary that risk is. But yet now, as a dad, never in a million years would I have like my kids. I'm like, hey, let's go walk along the dam just in case we can die. I'm just not going to do that. On my worst day, I'm never going to do that. So I think, for us, I think we start out as just naturally not knowing risks. And I think the more that we progress through life, the more safe that we make life, and the more we become adverse to risk. And yet I think that we have to go through and know, okay, what is a risk that I need to take? Because unless we actually take a risk, we won't grow.
Right. Yeah. Right. Chad, so much of what you're saying there, I think, speaks to how I believe the majority of us men learn. There are many men who like to read and who like to explore and build their intellect that way. But I have to tell you, from my personal experience, that's not the majority of men. The majority of men are actually, they have to learn by doing. They have to figure it out. They have to put their toe in the water. Yeah. And that's like, I can't even tell you, Kyle and I just talked the other day about his aversion to reading. Like, he's like, no, like, just give me the stuff to do and I'll figure it out. But I am not a reader. And by and large, you see that with men. But figuring it out on your own means that you have to work through the risk in real time. Okay. You can't read it in a book and go, well, it looks like the risk could be this way, but that helps to etch the learning in our brain. And I find it interesting. I do find it really interesting in that I'm not at all opposed to reading either. I'm very much that way. But we talk about read, but the nature of the man is to do. And even if he reads a bunch, he still has to go out and do to actually see if it works like they said it was going to work. And so that's where the risks come in. And it's kind of an interesting thing. I see more and more men relying on everything from YouTube videos to books, and they don't really experience because they are risk averse. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And, I think that there's a place. I'm an avid reader, read hundreds of books. So I'm probably on maybe on the other side of the spectrum of what you're talking about, Merle. But I think you're right. I mean, I think that there has to be a place where you put your toe in the water, where you take that risk, where you step into that space. So I want to talk about this. You kind of said like intellectually growing or those kinds of things, which that's important. You read or listen to a book by yourself. But I think one of the values that a man can have, and really, I think one of the things that will probably help define Christianity going forward. Again, this is just my kind of anecdotal experience and kind of like, kind of my view of the world right now. But I think it's the men who can literally go through and they can read something in a book, or they can listen to something in a podcast, and they will actually be able to share those ideas with another person. I think it's the people who are going to be the world changers, who are willing to risk looking like a fool to shape themselves, to make themselves better. So taking something you may read in a book and yet kind of wrestle with this idea, but then bring that idea to the accompaniment, particularly because our audience is going to be men, is bringing that to the accompaniment of other men. I'm a firm believer that you become a man in the accompaniment of other men.
Yes.
You don't become a man individually. It takes the accompaniment of other men. Primarily, I think the way that God has wired us is that would be our dad. And if our dad is not there, there needs to be some sort of father figure. But even outside of that, thinking in concentric circles, I think that we become a man in the accompaniment of other men. So it could be a men's group at the church. It could be just a group of guys that you sit around a fire and just talk about ideas. But I think that guys have to kind of get even beyond themselves and even beyond the books to say, okay, here's an idea, here's a truth, here's something I'm wrestling with, and risk looking like a fool to go and bring it in front of a couple other trusted guys to just say, hey, I don't have this all figured out. Help me, help me understand this biblical truth. I'm in a season of doubt. I'm in a season of discouragement. I'm in a season of maybe even, I feel like, I don't even know what depression is, but maybe I'm in an early stage of depression, and to take that risk, relational risk, and just an emotional risk, to just kind of go forward to a group of men to say, hey, could you pray for me? Could you support me? Can I call you? I'm struggling right now, and I feel like I don't have a way out. Could you be my lifeline? There's a lot of risk that's there too. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's
one thing I kind of just listen to you talk, Chad, man. I think one of the things that I'm hearing a lot from what you're talking about is the idea that risk is a learned behavior, that I think now more than ever. I may be not as old as Merle, but I think now
you had to go there, didn't you? You had to go there. See, it's just, subversion just comes right behind me.
I mean, Merle he's like Old Testament old though. I mean, so I understand it, right?
Yes.
All you young kids reading this New Testament, what are you doing reading this New Testament? I don't even know what you're talking about.
But I say that because I think now more than ever, like, society is damping down men, and they're telling us that risk is dangerous and we shouldn't do that. And to your point, Chad, about teaching our kids that risk, I mean, we have to calculate those risks, obviously, but risks are important because that's where learning comes from. I share all the time on our show that I have a small group. Every Tuesday night, I meet with a group of dudes, and we just sit around. Most of them drink bourbon and smoke cigars, and we just sit around and talk about Jesus and talk about different seasons that we're going in our life. But we encourage each other to take those risks. Like, let's be bold in what we say, how we say it, our actions. And just like you said, man, we can't be fearful of looking like a fool, because if we never attempt, if we never take those risks, how are we ever going to find out if that's something we maybe have a passion for? That's for me, that's why I got into the fire service. It was a huge risk. I'm a small dude. Like firefighting is a man's sport, right? It's no joke. And like as a small guy, it was a risk for me to jump into that arena, but I had to try it. I have to work with my hand. It's something that God put that on my heart. Like I'm a doer, and firefighting just kind of fit right into that. But if I would have never taken that risk, what would my life look like? I'd be miserable right now if I was sitting behind a desk. I'm just not made that way.
Yeah, that's so true. The idea of putting yourself out, Chad, I think of physical risk. I've taken many physical risks in my life, but physical risks are actually something that like I'm kind of wired for. Like I do want to see how far I can ride my bike or the mountain I can climb. Like, and honestly, like even though they bring the butterflies into my belly a little bit, like I'm kind of equipped for that. But over 5 years ago, I was in an arena that scared the daylights out of me. And that was, we were going to adopt 3 kids. And I mean, here I am at the time, 53, almost 54 years old. I thought that ship had sailed, right? Like I'm out of the kid thing and I'm coming back around. And I felt the emotional risk like I had never felt. So the physical risk was one thing. The idea of, well, can I climb the mountain? And I was, again, like I can handle that, or at least I welcomed it. I was scared to death of this emotional risk. The just messing up my family was the thing. Like, what am I going to do? I already have a family. And that whole risk, and I've shared this before. I sat in church. We battled this, like I battled this mentally, like no mountain I'd ever tried to climb before. And I was in church and I was actually with one of my biological sons that he came back to visit. And in the middle of church, I just start crying. I'm just like, and he looks at me and he's a big old dude. And he looks at me, he's like, what's wrong with you? And then, and I'm like, I'll explain later, And I walked out of church and it was exactly kind of as you talked about, like, it is time to do this. It is time to jump off this cliff. It is time to soar. And I have no clue how it's going to turn out, but that was an area of risk taking that freaked me out completely because of the lack of control. The emotional part of it, like, men do not like to be emotionally vulnerable. It's like very uncomfortable. And so of all the risks I've taken, that's the one that really freaked me out the most. And still to this day, I mean, it's like, no, that's a tough one for me.
Yeah, and it just really goes back to the core of how men were designed. Particularly, we're to be initiators. We are to be the people on the forefront of things. And there is a risk that was, that is implied and just implicit in being a man. And obviously there are risks for ladies too. So I'm not downplaying the role of women, but it's just different. The primary and secondary means, and men are to be initiators, and you're not going to grow as a man unless you're willing to risk something. It's interesting, Merle, as you're talking about that, because, I was starting to think back, when I was a little boy, watching Rambo, and I'm actually not that much younger than, I'm just a little bit younger than you, Merle. So
you're right at the end of Old Testament.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm in the into the intertestamental period in between Old and New Testament. So
you're like Malachi there. You're
exactly. So just missed it by 400 years to be in the New Testament. So it's one of those things for me. It's like when I was a little kid and then even a teenager, the man that I dreamt of being, it was, modeled after, John Wayne in watching the Green Berets. Amazing movie. I remember watching that with my dad, and my dad, he was, in the Army during the period of Vietnam. He wasn't in Vietnam, but in the period of Vietnam. So that was his era. He understood all that. Green Berets, we have a long line, generations of people who serve in the military. So we're very much in alignment with all those things. But even in watching Rambo, now I realize Rambo had all sorts of issues, right? All sorts of issues. But I remember as a kid, I'm like, man, he can do it all.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
give him a survival knife and put him out in the woods, and man, he can do whatever he needs to get things done. And there was just something of like watching those movies that just was causing me to like, okay, well up with like wanting to do something, wanting to initiate, wanting to have power. And now I know, and I have some theology around it, but that's the way that God has made us,
Yeah.
is to have agency, to have power, to be doers. And for us to be doing things physically, that stuff comes easier. Truthfully, it just comes easier
Yeah.
for most guys. I realize there's some guy who has maybe some sort of maybe reason why he doesn't feel that he can really interject physically, but generally and widely, I think most men, the physical aspect comes easier. We can feel empowered by going out and, in training jiu-jitsu and playing football and being rough and all of that. And, getting a handgun, getting your concealed carry and feel like now I'm a man because I have all these things, and,
Right.
and kind of be that role of protector. But yet what is not as easy is wading into the issues of the heart.
Yeah.
And those are the things that we really probably don't dream about. We're 10 years old. We don't dream about those things. But yet, most men who are listening to this, strong dads, you're probably married or on the pathway to become married. So you're going to live the rest of your life having to wade into the issues of the heart. And you may only have one other instance where you have to draw upon that desire, the inner desire to protect. You may only have one instance, and I pray you never have that instance where you have to actually stand up and protect, either physically, with just physical force or some sort of weaponry. But you're going to live the rest of your life having to take risks to wade into the issues of the heart.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no question about it. We just did our show, which will drop here in a few weeks, but it was about understanding emotions. Basically, the theme of the deal was, should a man learn to talk about his feelings? And, my take on that really is like, man, it's not about talking about your emotions. It's about understanding the power, the energy that's in an emotion, because those are the things that birth great things. Like the idea that I was so scared and timid about this adoption is the thing that actually has become a life changer. Our family has changed. Our kids have changed. It's probably one of the largest changes of life, all due to an emotion that was so powerful. And I think a teaching, as you just talked about, the heart issues, the bicep issue is what it is, right? But the heart issue is what men need to take the risk in. And I see the reason often that they don't take the risk in is because they're afraid of it. Like emotions freak them out. And so it's a whole lot better for me, like you said, talk about, I'm going to go get my concealed carry permit. I'm going to go climb a mountain. Those are things that can make me have the persona of man, but the actual dealing and harnessing the energy of emotion is a risk that many men are not ready to take.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm all about those things. I have no problem with guns. I don't have a concealed carry, but I have a pistol. I'm going to be getting that. I'm a hiker. I love being outside. I love pushing myself physically, all of that stuff. I enjoy it.
Right.
I'm really wired in that way. And yet there's an aspect of the risk taking when it comes to relationships. There's a risk that's implied, and really I think where the risk goes into, and I thought about this as actually you were talking about adoption. There's also this kind of thought, okay, am I going to be rejected? Right? Because if I'm going to adopt this child or these children, are they going to reject me? Is this not going to work? Is this all going to be for nothing? Like, and then you go forward and everybody's celebrating, hey, we're adopting, and you make this statement. As soon as you make it public, other people know. What happens if that child rejects you?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do in that situation? And then there's the faith element there too. It's like, okay, God, I thought God was leading us to do this, and yet there's a risk there because you went public with it. And now is this going to reflect poorly upon God? Is this going to reflect poorly upon my faith? And now people are going to look at me and say, well, now I'm not really a man of God, and I don't hear from God. And obviously this was a mistake. I mean, there's all sorts of risk taking that was even in that story, wasn't there?
Oh, well, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it hasn't always gone well. Okay, so we're over 5 years in it, and there has been rejection.
I did not know that. I apologize if
Yeah,
I'm
no,
weighing in
no,
somewhere
no,
that
no.
I shouldn't
Actually,
have.
it's part of the story, right? And it's still part of the growth of the story. And it's the rejection is not just a rejection of myself and my wife, but it's also a young man who is trying to figure it out as well. And so I've actually not taken it personally because I'm actually like really embracing where he is in the rejection process. There are a lot of things scaring the daylights out of me. And he's seeking a level of comfort, of connection. And, we have to let him reject us, so the story of the prodigal son is weighing very heavy in our lives right now. And the story of the prodigal son is not so much about the dad accepting the son back. It's actually more about the son growing up and changing his heart. In other words, accepting the struggle that he went through and dealing with the emotions of the hard life and then trying to make it right. And so it's just, and that's the doing. Like I don't, we looked at our son and it's like, I don't want you to leave us, but I know you need to. I know you need to do this. This is part of the risk that he needs to do. He has to figure this out. And so from a man perspective, and trust me, my wife and I have gone round and round about this, but from a man's perspective, the best way I can love him is to allow him to take this risk. And that's, and the prayers keep going, but we want him to take this risk. And we know that it's probably not going to be a bed of roses. But that's where, that's where a man is, and he's wanting to be a man.
Yeah. If I could just say this, it's kind of speaking into that situation. It's like rebellion never ends in a bed of roses.
Right. No,
it just doesn't. And for you, it just kind of sounds like you're waiting for your son to just come to his senses, just like the prodigal son. He did. He came to his senses, but it was after a long, hard process and realizing that the life that he left was a heck of a lot better than the life that he was currently pursuing. And so there's a faith walk that you guys are on right there. And again, I didn't know, I wasn't privy to that information. So I wasn't trying to cause any sort of, any guiding of conversation there. So I apologize.
I want to throw something out. I recently heard from a Texas representative. He made a comment that there is value in suffering. When he said that, it's not a new statement. It's not like that. But for me, it was one of those that the only way for there to be suffering is there has to be a risk, or there has to be something that is broken in order for that suffering to happen. And I think it just goes to exactly what this conversation is happening, that man, there's so much good that happens from emotional risk, from physical risk. And in those risks, there might be suffering. There might be times when life just kind of sucks, right? But on the other end of it, the hope is that God's redeeming love redeems us in that. And although we had to suffer to get to that point, man, it's going to be worth it, because God's never going to leave us. Like, he's always going to be right there alongside of us in those risks, in that suffering. Man, he's going to be right there with us. And I think that on the other end of it, that's when the value, that's when you start to really reap, everything, all the fruits of your labor are going to come to. But unless you take those risks, emotional or physical, there's never going to be that suffering and the value that comes from that.
Yeah, totally agree, Kyle. And, I think of this and just adding just even another layer, spiritual risk. I was thinking, as you were talking, I was thinking about my call into vocational ministry. We were firmly planted in a church. I was helping in the men's ministry. We were small group leaders. We were helping with kids in the kids ministry. I was serving as a deacon. Everything was going great. The job was great. My wife's job was great. Everything was awesome. Owned a home. Everything was rocking and rolling. And yet God just kind of like whispered to my wife and I at the same time, "Hey, I'm actually going to be pulling you out of here, and you are actually going to be going into full-time ministry. You're going to go into something you're not equipped for. You're not educated in. You're going to be over your head." And when I told the church that, the church celebrated. The church was like, "Yes, this is awesome. Somebody's being sent out of our church." However, how I led out my part of the conversation earlier, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. My parents aren't Christians. They're still not. My mother's is no longer alive, but my dad is not. We have great conversations. We talk about things of Christianity and Christ and the Bible, those things. But I haven't seen evidence that he's truly committed his life to Jesus, that he's redeemed, that he's following Christ. So while the church celebrated that spiritual faith step that came with a lot of risks, when I went home and I told family members, I said, "Hey, God is drawing us to Florida. We're moving. We're actually going to move your grandkids, or they're coming with us. You can't keep them. They're coming with us. And so now we're going to live, 15 hours or whatever it was. Actually, I think it was 18 hours away from them. And there was a lot of risk there too. I knew that was a risk that God was calling us to. There was it was a faith journey and faith step. But every faith step that God calls us to has an implied risk. Yes. Because there could be people in Christ who celebrate those risks, or who maybe aren't further enough in their own walk who don't celebrate it. But if you have family members or friends who are outside of the fold of Christ, they may just see you as being the craziest person, right, and they could just wash their hands of you. And there's a lot of risk. So even spiritually, all the great missionaries, and I'm no great missionary, but all the great missionaries who left their home because God had whispered something and said, "Hey, this is what I want you to do, and this is where I want you to go." I think that there was a lot of risk that was in that, because again, I think every faith step requires a level of risk. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Chad, as you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking, so going back to the very beginning, there is a problem with the man culture in many ways, and that we have left the scene, so to speak, of the family and those kind of things. And, we often talk about pride. Pride comes before the fall. And one of the things that our culture is very, very big on is the pride that every man has. Every man can beat his chest because he is great and he is awesome. And as we're unfolding this conversation, I'm thinking of the reason why risk-taking should be encouraged is because when you're scared to death, you have to develop a humble heart. You have to ask for help. You have to pray. I never prayed before like I prayed during that adoption process. Mm-hmm. The humbleness of it, of I don't have it together. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to survive. I think we are called as men to take these risks because we are all full of ourselves by our own natural physical gifts. And as long as I don't have to be tested, beyond what I think I'm capable of, it's all about me. I scored the touchdown. I won. I'm great. But when we take these kinds of risks and we get scared to death, finally, we have to humble ourselves to a greater thing. And we call that Jesus Christ. And I'm just, the more we talk about this, I'm like, it's becoming more solid in my mind why we need to encourage men to take risks. And Kyle, as you said, and even if we fail, God provides us grace. So it's not like you fail and he slams the door on you. He's like, "No, dude, come back. No, come on, little guy, you wrecked your bike. Get back up on the bike. Keep doing." And so, you just really kind of helped me put that together in my own mind. Like, this is why men are called to heavier risk with a greater opportunity for failure or even physical damage, emotional damage, because we have to be broken down more. We're a little bit more of a wild stallion that needs to be broken.
That's even leading me to think about meekness, thinking about a horse, and a horse has just an incredible amount of strength. And the goal with a wild stallion or a horse is not to, they talk about breaking a horse, which I really hate that word. I realize I'm not someone who even cares for horses or who's really in the equestrian state, or stage of anything, but just meekness is taking that strength and putting it under control.
Yes.
And for us men, it's like to take that, to become meek is using and harnessing that strength and putting it under control, which is what they do with the horse, because a wild stallion has an incredible amount of strength, but that strength is not usable unless it's harnessed for the greater good. And it's the same thing with our strength.
Yeah.
And there's in taking the applicable risks, doing the things that we should. I haven't thought about this. I was thinking about this yesterday, I think, and just kind of, just allowing my mind to think about risk, prepping for this show. I thought about when I asked my wife to marry me. We were high school sweethearts and all of that. So it's kind of a sappy story, but I'm okay with sappy stories. It's my story. So, and we've been married a long time, God be the glory. And a lot of times I'm not saying it's been perfect. It hasn't been perfect. It won't be perfect. I'm not perfect. She's not perfect. And we need Jesus at the center of all that.
Right.
But I was thinking back to when, I asked her to marry me and I had set the stage. I think I'd watched a movie or something and of this. So this idea wasn't like all my idea, just so everybody knows.
Right.
But I asked her to marry me at the top of the Ferris wheel at the Illinois State Fair. So it was the thing, and I'm like, I was 19, she was 19. I'm like scared to death. I'm like, I got the ring and I'm like, I felt like I was, bringing the Lord my last offering and hoping it was acceptable, like I could die right now. It was that whole thing. So, but there was a lot of risk there, because what happens if she wasn't feeling the same thing I was feeling? What happens if she wasn't willing to make that commitment that I was willing to make?
Yeah. What happens if you drop the ring at the top of the Ferris wheel?
Exactly. And now the carney has it at the bottom of the Ferris wheel, and I've got to buy it from him, and I'm already broke because I just bought the ring.
Yeah.
I was a sneaking E1 in the Navy. I mean, I had no money whatsoever, but it's just one of those things. Yeah. There are risks everywhere. And even for a man, and maybe a young man I realize it's a Strong Dads podcast, but maybe you're just kind of like listening to this and you're not even in this stage and you're trying to prep for that. There are risks everywhere. When you ask for a woman's hand in marriage, there's a risk there.
Yeah.
And that risk is good.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why I think, and I don't think it's old fashioned, I think there's a reason why the man asks the woman for her hand in marriage, is because the man is the initiator. Yeah. And then the woman is the reciprocator. She receives that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just one small example, but hey, she said yes. So there it is.
There you go.
It'll be 28 years this year. She said yes. And she keeps saying yes. And I kept saying yes. So praise God.
Some would say she took a greater risk than you did.
Yeah. People who know her and know me for sure. Yeah.
Well, hey, there's some major takeaways here. And I think, as we're talking about risk, we mentioned it a little bit before. This is not about just living wild. This is about calculated risk. This is about understanding, doing the cause and effect, the way out, what's the payoff, what's all this, because especially as we are men and become more responsible for more things, our risk impact more than ourselves. And I think that's something as well that we have to talk about. Like, when you up and moved to Florida, that was not just about Chad.
Nope.
There's a lot of other factors that go into this. And I think understanding that it just can't be, I don't want a strong dad to listen to this show and then come home to his wife and say, guess what, honey, we're selling the farm. I mean, that's not what I'm advocating. And I don't believe it is any of us on the show. It's like that idea of, okay, wait, who is this going to impact? What am I going to put them through? And even if I am going to put them through something that they're not comfortable, how am I going to help carry them through? As a man, like, no, honey, don't just shut up and get in the car and follow me. It's like, okay, as a man, how am I going to help those who are attached to me walk through this scary time with me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's brilliant. I'll even go back to, my call into vocational ministry now almost 16 years ago. So how that worked was it was kind of simultaneous. My wife and I both realizing, okay, God is up to something big. And there's a really cool God story there too. We're at a marriage conference. It's a Sunday afternoon. The conference ends on this Sunday. We just learned some incredible things about ourselves and about just about our marriage, and learn how to communicate better. And we had many years in the bank in marriage, and we're just figuring these things out. We're sitting down for lunch at the last day of this conference. And as we're sitting down, I just look over at my wife, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I just looked over at her and I said, I previously I used to work on airplanes. And I just told her, I said, babe, I just don't think that this aviation thing is forever. And she looked back at me and she says, I don't think it is either.
Yeah.
That was the spark of many conversations. What you're speaking about, it wasn't just Chad making a decision like, hey, we're just going to up and load the truck and move to Beverly Hills, Beverly Hillbillies. Like we're just heading off, because we struck oil. Instead, it's like, no, it was, I brought it to my wife. We prayed about it. We had many conversations about it. And then I brought it to community. I brought it to my pastor. And I remember where I talked to him on the steps of the church. And I said, this is what I think God is saying to us and calling us to do. And he affirmed that. He affirmed the call, what was going on. It wasn't some wild, adventurous thing like, hey, we want to move. So let's just, we'll make God foot the bill, that kind of thing. We brought it to community and they helped confirm what God was already speaking. Yeah. So there was a calculated risk, but it wasn't a risk that we were taking alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, can I just say something? As you guys are talking at work in the firefighter world, we have it's our risk management policy, and just what you're talking about, calculated risk. We always say you risk a lot to save a lot. You risk nothing to save nothing. Wow. And I think we can take that risk management policy that I carry. It's in my wallet. I carry a little card, and put that into exactly our conversation. That if the risk is there and it's something that God's put in your heart, then it's worth it. Like it's worth it. Although yes, it affects a lot of people, and it's that balancing action. Just what you were saying, Chad, about taking it to community. Like, is this a risk worth taking? Like, do you guys think that this is something valuable here? And to that it's worth that risk, then we should be jumping into that arena of making those risks. But on the flip side of that, if that risk is not going to bring fruit on the other end, or it's not seen, from people, we talk all the time about seeking wisdom from people who have been there, who have been in those type of arenas that can speak truth to you from the outside looking in, and who are also someone who is seeking God's wisdom and seeking God's word. Like, those are valuable people that we should be taking instruction and taking criticism and taking advice from. And if they don't see the benefit in those risks, that calculated risk that you were talking about, maybe it's not the right time. Maybe, not that it's a bad idea, just maybe it's not the right time for you. That risk management policy is something that we, in my world as a fireman, like that is our go-to. Like, if I pull up on a house fire and there's a report of someone inside, I'm going to risk a lot to get in there and occupy that arena to make sure I can, see if there is someone there. And it's something that we hold, like my cat's inside, that's probably not going to be something we're going to risk a whole lot of to save your cat. I'm sorry. Like, I don't want to discredit the
great. Now we're going to get all the cat lovers.
but to that point, it's just, if my job is set up that I'm willing to take that risk, but in return, there's a great benefit to it, I think, is what you're talking about, that calculated risk.
Yeah. I think it's a great example, risk a lot and the reward is great, just kind of stepping out and stepping any type of faith step has a greater promise on the other side.
Yeah.
Sure. We may not know what it is. For me, I firmly believe that it wasn't just God saying, well, now you're going to go live in Florida for 5 years. And the payoff is living in Florida for 5 years. And you get to leave, the cornfields and soybean, fields of Illinois.
Right.
Like, that wasn't the payoff. It's like, no, there's something that we were meeting God in that space. And with us, I realize we're talking like super spiritual things. And there's very few guys who are listening to this who are probably experiencing that level. But just kind of taking that idea of risk. I mean, we need to be able to take it to community. If you're going to ask somebody to marry you, you take that to some trusted brothers and say, hey, this is what I think that, this is what I think God would have me to do. What do you think? Am I prepared for this? What do I need to do? Okay, bringing that to community. You're willing to take the risk, but you don't want to take it alone. Because what you were saying, Merrill, because we don't want pride to just kind of take the show, because pride and ego will absolutely take the show.
Yeah.
There's a reason why, the kind of like tongue in cheek saying with guys is, hold my beer.
Right.
Right. Because that whole phrase implies I'm about to do something stupid on the other side, or I'm about to take a risk that I should not take on the other side.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing but pride and ego. Like, here, hold my beer. Right. And get your phone out, because
watch this. Yeah.
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 So for us, it's like, that can be, I realize that can be my tendency.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to be submitted to God. I have to be submitted to God. I have to be fully like connected to community. I need mentors. I need people discipling me. I need people who I'm discipling, who I need my wife. I need my kids now, my son, people who can discern truth to know, hey, is this a risk that I'm supposed to take? Because
Yeah.
I know that at my core, I can take some just really off the wall, stupid risks.
Yeah. Yeah, man, this is just great stuff. There's something in my mind that I feel like I want to get out a little bit as well, because we have men who are wild risk takers, but we also have men that have become almost just guided by the culture of low to no risk taking. And a lot of that has to do with I want to be careful here because, I don't want to say the right thing, but we have a lot of moms weighing in on little boys about, no, honey, that's not safe. That's not safe. That's not safe. Get off the trampoline. Don't walk. Don't climb the tree, these kinds of things. And we have men that are, if they're not in the scene, we don't have men saying, no, son, go ahead and jump on the trampoline. It'll be okay. Right. And so we have actually on our Strong Dads, we actually have many women that listen to the show as well. And this is an encouragement to the ladies. Like when we talk about God created women to be a very special and certain way. And we need that. We need every bit of that. Right. But we also have men created a certain way. And we need every bit of that. And so my encouragement here is for our moms out there and for our young dads, when you're raising a young boy, to help them, don't save them from the risk. God creates natural consequences. And that means sometimes things aren't always going to go well. Sometimes you're going to fall. The tree, down below the branch, there's the ground. Okay. And I'm not advocating dropping from 60 feet up in a tree. What I'm saying is that little boy, if he's going to grow to be a man, we need to encourage, as you talked about, Chad, that sort of calculated risk taking in our boys. We need to let them know, okay, when you do fall, you will be okay. You're going to get through it. It may not be pretty always, but you're going to get through it. Allow them to be that way versus we shelter them all the way through. And eventually they become this 25-year-old guy and they're just a shadow of themselves, because they really have not actually experienced what they're capable of.
And can I just say that as someone who's not raising boys, I have 2 girls. Like I want my girls to find a man that is willing to take risks. I need to be okay with that. And I need to understand that that's good, that I want my girls to find a man that actually is a man and not still in boyish ways, but is willing to take those risks. Like, yeah, that may be uncomfortable for my wife and I, for Jenny and I, it may be uncomfortable to watch our girls go through something with that person to, having taken those risks. But I want that. I want my girls to be with somebody who is willing to take risks because again, with suffering, there is value.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, that's one of those things that parents, both moms and dads, do this. They try and, helicopter parenting, whatever terminology you want to use. There's a bunch of them that they throw around, meaning a similar thing. I think what parents don't realize is they're actually causing their kids to have fear. Like if you don't allow them to have age appropriate risks, you're actually causing them to be fearful.
Yeah.
And there too, and just, I just don't want, my message, I have a daughter and I'll just give a humbling example. We were at, I think it's called Cumberland Falls. It's in Eastern Kentucky. Beautiful, beautiful. Cumberland Falls, just that whole area. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but it's gorgeous. And so we were there several years ago. My daughter was a little bitty at the time. And we're standing up on this boulder, not the fall. So, don't at me on thinking that I've done something wrong. But
hanging from a cliff.
Yeah, we're standing on this boulder, and it's my son, my daughter, and myself. And my son, he's older, so he's looking right over the edge, and he's like wanting to be right on the edge, and he's having a blast. I'm having a blast. I go look at the edge, and my daughter naturally she wanted to go to the edge. And I grabbed her and I was like, no, 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 no. I'm like, I pulled her back and, I'm like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. My wife, and I was humbled by this. My wife looked at me. She said, let her go to the edge.
Mm.
If you don't, she needs to go to the edge too.
Wow.
Yeah.
She needs to be able to experience this.
Hmm.
And so wisely, as a dad, I was, within both arms of her going to the edge. It wasn't just like,
Right.
all right, go take off. But she went to the edge of the boulder and she looked over. But that was overcoming fear. And I think we have such small examples, but big implications like that, to where I think even with our little girls, I don't want my little girl to be somebody who is so passive and submissive that she doesn't have a brain for herself or doesn't have a heart for herself.
Right.
I think that she, in her own way, with the feminine heart, that she can be like Joshua, to be strong and courageous.
Absolutely.
I think that this isn't just, a boy's world, a man's world. I think that I think there are defined roles. That's probably another podcast, another hour-long conversation. But I think that there are defined roles within masculinity and femininity, but I think that we have some shared qualities. Sure. And I think risk-taking is a shared quality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Because we bring different things to the risk, whether it's the detail-oriented brain or the muscle brain or whatever. We bring different things, but it's the idea that we take the risk and then we know where to seek the strength from to get through the risk. Mm-hmm. And putting ourselves aside and getting that strength through Christ, I think is, a bottom line lesson here that we want to gravitate towards. So Chad, this has been a great conversation. Really enjoyed just talking with you. And I love the ministry, that work that you're doing. I mean, I didn't even mention on top of this, you're a pastor of a church. Yep. Do you sleep? When do you do all that?
I actually, I want to say I sleep well. I sleep well because I'm tired when I go to sleep.
You're exhausted. Yeah. Well, we just greatly appreciate what you're doing. And I'd like you just kind of wrap things up here, if we could, with the idea of, is there a takeaway that you'd like our Strong Dad listeners to take from this, that you have thought about?
Yeah, I would just say this. Take the calculated risks because you can't grow otherwise.
Like it. Yeah. I met with a young guy yesterday and he was a talker. He was a talker and he's a good kid. But he doesn't have a father figure. And he was just circling the plane with all the woulda, shoulda, couldas. Because he's dropped out of a lot of sports. He's dropped out of this and dropped out of that, but he could have, all of these. And I was just like, but I'm going to call you out. It's time to be a man of action, because you don't want to be a woulda, shoulda, coulda man when you're 60 years old, so that's a great, great thing. Kyle, sign us out of here, dude.
Yeah.
Unless you got something great to say.
You've taken it all. You and Chad. No, I really, Chad, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I think you got a really cool message. Again, just like Merle was saying at the beginning of the show, like, we are not competitors. We're in this together. I think the more guys we can grab a hold of, I don't think any of us would claim to be perfect. We all are flawed in our own way. Some more than other, Merle. Yeah. But I think guys, I hope you hear our hearts. I hope you hear the message in this. Share the heck out of this show. I think it's got some really good stuff out there talking about risk and calculated risk. Thanks so much for Kramer's Beer House and Casey's Outdoor Solutions for coming alongside of us. Share the heck out of the show. Like I said, give us a 5-star rating on all the platforms out there. We really do appreciate you, Chad. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, Merle, it's been my pleasure. I appreciate it.
Heck yeah. Merle, we good?
We are good. All right. So go out there and be some strong dads. Thanks, Chad.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hey, this is Kyle Crawford from Strong Dads. Strong Dads podcast would love to thank the Kramer's Beer House for coming alongside of us. The Kramer's Beer House was started in 1982 by the Kramer family, and since that time, they have definitely become a Cincinnati favorite. So if you're looking for an incredible meal in an incredible setting, definitely go down to Route 128 and check out the Kramer's Beer House.